Welcome to another episode of the Modern Hotelier. We're excited to bring this episode to you with Mark Harmon, founder of Auberge Resort Collection. David, what were some of your favorite takeaways from this conversation?
Yeah, I think it's always amazing when we meet people that started off down one path. He started down the legal route and studying law, made it into hospitality, and then really just the thought process as he talked about the way they approach the properties, the really this notion of, hey, you can't make money on a 50-room property, which I've heard over and over again. And he kind of just blew that up and said, yes, we can. And again, it was a great conversation.
I love how his law degree helped him with hospitality because he did focus on the real estate side of things for a minute. So talking about, how hotels can use real estate to make money. And he kind of took it from that perspective, and also just, one of the leaders in luxury hospitality in the United States. So it was great to kind of pick his brain on all things luxury hospitality. Excited to hear what you think about in the comments, and enjoy.
Enjoy. Welcome to the Modern Hotelier, the most engaged podcast in hospitality. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe, and let us know in the comments what you think about today's episode. Steve, who do we have on the program today?
Yeah, David, excited for this conversation. We have on Mark Harmon, the founder of Auberge Resort Collection. Thanks for joining us, Mark. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you.
All right, Mark. So we're going to dive in. We're going to go through a lightning round. We're going to, again, get to know you better, and then we're going to dive into some industry topics. Sound good?
Sounds great. Let's go.
All right. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
President of the United States.
Okay. Something you wish you were better at?
Surfing.
Okay. What's a luxury you can't live without?
A great breakfast.
Name a person, dead or alive, you'd like to take to lunch.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. There's so many. It might be William Blake, the poet.
Okay. All right. So if you could have a superpower, what superpower would you like to have?
I'd like to be able to bring change, meaningful change to the world. I mean, it doesn't get better than that, right? Make a difference.
No, I agree. All right. Let everyone know what's something that's on your bucket list.
Man. Well, as I said, I'd love to be a better surfer. I've taken that up recently. So I'd love to ride some waves and get barreled.
That's great. That's great. So, Mark, now we're going to learn a little bit about your background and what makes you tick. So you spent a lot of time in the Napa area as you were growing up. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So how did growing up in Napa kind of shape you into who you are today?
Well, Napa is a beautiful place. And over the years, spending that much time up there, I've really seen it grow. What's so special about Napa is it's retained its agricultural character. I mean, there are wineries, there's some restaurants, but essentially it's all pretty much in vineyard. 95% of the county is in vineyard. And that just gave me a great appreciation for the preservation and of a great lifestyle there and of nature. It could have been paved over. It could have looked like a subdivision, but the people there, the politicians and the community they had the foresight to be able to preserve this agricultural way of life. And it's a really special place.
So you got your bachelor's from Princeton and then your law degree from University of California. What led you to those universities and the law degree?
Well, growing up in California, I wanted to experience the East Coast. So I had the opportunity to attend Princeton, which was really an incredible experience. Not only just a wonderful education, but seeing a different part of the world and the United States and, learning more about culture, the East Coast, and meeting so many people from so many different backgrounds. I mean, that was just fantastic. And then went on to law school, which was kind of a traditional path. I'd say a well-worn path. And then my father was a lawyer, my older brother was a lawyer, my younger brother's a lawyer. So following a little bit of the family footsteps there.
So one thing I found when doing my research about you, Mark, is you do not like long hallways. As someone who is in the hospitality space, has luxury resorts, surprising to find that. But tell me a little bit about why you don't like long hallways.
The model for me forming Auberge Resorts, and it's now called the Auberge Collection, is the Auberge du Soleil, which opened as a restaurant in 1981, and then the cottages were added later. Every one of the cottages has its own dedicated entrance, its own dedicated deck. They're beautiful, spacious rooms with views out over the Napa Valley. I just thought in my mind, gosh, if I'm going to build more hotels, which I ended up doing and really loving, what a great model that is. Not to have to walk down a hallway and see other people. You have the sense of privacy. And when you're building to the luxury standards, it's something that we found the guests truly prized is that sense of privacy, exclusion, having your little sanctuary there. And especially because we really have focused to a great degree on the romantic getaway. And what's more romantic than that, having a little cottage on a hillside overlooking the Napa Valley?
Kind of leads perfectly to my next question, but we're going to dive into your career, how you ended up, founding Auberge Resort Collection. So, like you said, in 1981, your dad, Bob, he joined up with a French restaurateur, Claude, is it Roas?
Ruas, yes.
Ruas, sorry. And they opened up Auberge du Soleil in Napa Valley. Then you added guest rooms in 1985. You were a lawyer for 6 years, then got bit by the hospitality bug. What was that final straw where you're like, I'm leaving law and I'm going to go join my dad in his hotel business?
Well, I got to tell you, I love the aspects of the law business that I was in. We were forming companies. I was kind of in the heart of what was happening in Silicon Valley, and companies were going public. It was biotech, there was software, and so forth. But as a lawyer, you ended up pushing a lot of paper, and the creativity to it was nice, but it was a smaller percentage of the overall workforce. And I love creating things, so I look beyond the practice of law to try to find an area that where I could be creative, where I could build things that would last and have real value. And I had a perfect model in the Auberge du Soleil, which my dad had started with his partner, Claude.
So with that transition, is there something from your legal background that you really take with you and really get to apply on a day-to-day basis in hospitality?
Well, that's a great question. As a matter of fact, I found myself having to unlearn many things. I was trained trained as a lawyer for. In particular, I needed to transition to becoming a leader rather than someone questioning and trying to pull things apart, acting in the best interest of the client. You've got to anticipate all sorts of problems. Now, that's an important skill, but at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur and as a leader, you have to take risks. You have to believe in people. You have to lead with empathy and some of the characteristics that are not exactly, what a lawyer has.
Yeah.
So in 1998, you decided to expand Auberge from, one hotel to multiple hotels, kind of, as you say, creating the collection. What caused you and your father to decide to expand that collection? And can you tell us to where you are currently and how you've grown since 1985?
So in starting the Auberge Collection, which is a management company, my primary goal was to build hotels. Having been in the real estate business, because I transitioned from being a lawyer into the development business, real estate development, and found out pretty quickly that you really need to have an excellent management company to be able to, see these assets perform, whether they're shopping centers or office buildings or whatever. And it is so much more true in terms of hotels. Hotels are living, breathing things, and you've got people and you have to deliver a great experience. So to me, the first step was to form this management company. And what we found was that we were being approached by a number of people, real estate developers and owners that wanted to capture the magic of the Auberge du Soleil. So the Auberge du Soleil, as I mentioned, is a romantic hideaway, had a really great connection to the guests. It was a place where people came for proposals and engagements and celebrations, birthdays, all sorts of things, or just simply getting away with your loved one and, forgetting about life on a daily basis and enjoying the beauty of the Napa Valley, maybe having a glass of wine or two. And so, we had that connection, and we found people coming to us saying, we like to bottle some of that magic. Can you help us out? We've got a hotel project here. The first one was in Cabo. And I'd spent a little time down in Cabo, fun place. When I went there, it was fairly wild, fairly undeveloped. But Las Ventanas had just opened up, and it was very, very successful. And people realized that, my gosh, here's a great getaway, which is a short distance from, from California, easy to get to, great climate, great food, etc. And, they wanted to build a small luxury resort on the ocean. And they talked to different operators, and we hit it off. And a lot of the reason why we hit it off for that first project was because I loved real estate, and a lot of the big brands didn't really think of real estate as their primary mission. A lot of times it was, well, we serve the guests, and by the way, these owners over here and this real estate stuff, that's a side note. Well, to me, that was the show. And so being able to partner with great developers to be able to deliver not only an exceptional hospitality experience, but be able to deliver that for the owners. So we had 60 villas at Esperanza. Soon after that was Chileno Bay. We did Calistoga Ranch, which has a residential component. And we were on a roll from 98 to 2008. We had great success in building the company because we had found a direction that really gave a lot of returns and magic, if you will, to the development.
It's great.
Yeah, you've touched on it, but maybe dive a little bit deeper for those who aren't familiar with the brand Auberge. Talk a little bit more,
Sure.
a little bit deeper in there.
Sure. As I mentioned, we formed the company in 1998 as a management company and took on largely management roles. I acted as a developer for several projects, for example, Solage, which is in Calistoga in the Napa Valley. And the idea really was to develop excellence in terms of what we did, what we built. And it was a different model. It was really kind of, as I said, a lot of hotel companies had hallways. We didn't. We also, the Auberge du Soleil was a complete outlier. It was a 50-room hotel. And if you talk to most hoteliers, or developers, they'd say, well, how can you make money on a 50-room hotel? That doesn't make sense. Well, you have to provide an exceptional experience, right? So we had to hit all the right things: the cuisine, the service, the views, the physical product, the spa, wellness offerings, and so forth. And when you get all those things right, what we found was that people would say, oh my gosh, this is an amazing experience. It's really not an equation where you're saying, I'm going to sleep here, therefore, how much am I paying? It was, boy, this experience is spectacular. I don't care really what it costs in some ways, because I got reconnected with my loved one. We had an amazing experience. This is what living is all about. And really, in a lot of ways, it was kind of a very European model, because you'll find these small little inns and resorts all over Europe and France. And the name Auberge means inn in French, Auberge du Soleil, the Inn of the Sun. So it was that model that, we took out there. And as I said, paired up with real estate developers who loved the idea that we could bring that magic of this very, very special experience across the board, and the spa, the wellness, the cuisine, to elevate the experience of not only the guests, but the owners who were buying there.
And you talk about the experience. You talk about, the smaller hallways or lack of hallways. Is there something that, maybe a philosophy that you have with your designs of these hotels that do create a higher quality experience?
Yes, absolutely. So over the years, really developed a philosophy of how to create these resorts. And I would say that a number of things. First of all, it should have a very residential feel, which means, you're putting the person first. You're putting the scale of the property into something that feels human and you can connect with it. Great design, I think, involves being true to the land. really reflecting the character and the nature of the land that you're blessed to have the opportunity to develop. It means you want to use the materials that are, part of that place, that it looks like it belongs there. That to me is super important. And a place that's not imposing on the guest, but rather celebrates the guests in creating an intimate and warm, almost residential atmosphere. I love the saying of a designer that we work with, Todd Lenihan. He said, a great hotel makes you feel like a better version of yourself. And that
That's
saying
great.
really struck home with me. And that's what you look for. We obviously focus on things like sustainability, making sure we're responsible in delivering a luxury experience. And there are a number of other tenets there, but those are the core principles that we developed over the years.
That's great. And so, what's next for Auberge?
Well, actually, there are a number of different auberges here, not to really get too confusing. But so first of all, there's the Auberge du Soleil, which is owned by my family, and I take care of it. Then there's the Auberge Collection, which is the management company, which I sold to the current ownership group back in 2018. And went back to what I love doing, which is developing hotels from the ground up. And so that's Auberge Partners. I know I've got you completely confused here. Like, which one is this? In carrying this on, I'm currently working on a project in Hill Country, in Texas Hill Country, and we're building a Waldorf Astoria. So it's not an Auberge brand, but it's going to be, like I described, a small, intimate property, only 60 rooms in the hotel, and then residences and villas around it that will be a part of this 100-acre campus that has spectacular views of Texas Hill Country. And this is what I love doing. I love working with designers. I love creating things. And to me, one of the most gratifying elements of that is to be able to create meaningful opportunities for the people that work there. And that's really, it gets me out of bed in the morning.
I love that. So is that what you made? That's why you started Auberge Partners, was to focus more on the design and almost working with different hotel partners?
That's correct. Yeah. I'd work with Auberge in a heartbeat. I love it. It's my baby. And they are doing a fantastic job. The company has opened up properties in Europe, and, they've got some really, really beautiful properties. So I'm quite proud of the direction they're going, their wonderful leadership. And we stay in touch, and I work with them to send them opportunities, whether they're guests, my friends, or development opportunities.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So now we're going to get to the industry thought part of the podcast. So one thing that we have really seen over the past year or two is luxury is the hottest market in hotels right now. Why do you think that is? And what are we going to see here from the luxury segment over the next year or two?
Well, I think the growth of the luxury segment can be attributed to the tremendous growth in wealth, which is concentrated in a small portion of the population. There's tremendous wealth there, but that wealth is growing around the world, in India and China and other Vietnam and so forth. So they're more wealthy people that are looking for those great experiences that are part and parcel of luxury. Sadly, there's some tales in this economy where the people who are not wealthy are really suffering. And, that's why certainly there's this division in the world, and, that the haves and the have-nots, and that's becoming more and more pronounced. But the luxury segment has flourished because of the massive creation of wealth out there.
Yeah. And what do you think is next over the next year and a half? Any new trends or anything you see coming into the segment that you might be excited about?
I think that and when I started going in this business, we tried to simplify things. We tried to keep it the properties honest and really, not get into the amenity wars that all the other brands were, they have to have this and you have to have that. They wanted a place that felt very comfortable, warm and friendly and so forth. And, the industry has continued to get away from that. And then, we've gone into the experiential world, and where experiential luxury is sort of the flavor of the day. and everybody's providing these programming opportunities and experiences that will enrich people's lives. I think that's going to continue. And what I would imagine might happen in the next few years is there's going to be an integration of the wellness factor, there already is, and these experiences. And I think that's going to open up a lot of opportunities. And I'll mention one that it's going to sound a little far out there, but I think that, for example, plant medicine and, could be a significant way of combining wellness with a hospitality experience. Now, it's not recreational. This is something that really, promotes mental health. It promotes longevity. There are ways to deal with trauma, which is what's inside many people, but doesn't have a chance to get out there. So if we have the opportunity to address those issues in the context of a place where you go to retreat and you go to renew yourself and you go to refresh, that could be very interesting. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
So whether it be business or sports, culture is always important. Why do you think culture is so important for hotels?
I gave a talk on this at one point and called that the soul of the hotel. It's the people. And, we can talk about design and places feeling residential and warm and comfortable and romantic, but at the end of the day, it's all about the people and the experience that they deliver to the guest. And so to me, the most important element of creating a great experience in hospitality is the people, the team that you have there on the site. So how they are trained, how are they treated, how are they honored in their experiences, and how we can celebrate what those people do and give them, not only wonderful facilities, but also, the type of training and really understanding and opportunities for growth that will bring out the best in these people. I think the old saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture is behind everything. And I think it's so important. And what does that really mean? It means that you have to have a vision of a place that is respectful, that honors, and really loves the people that work there. And delivering that takes leadership. It takes a lot of empathy. And I think that sometimes we get hospitality confused with the category. We're luxury, we're upper upscale, we're this, that, and the other thing. No, we're in the business of providing love and experience to these people in a careful way. And that to me is the be all and end all for hospitality, is about culture.
Follow-up question to culture. One thing that I've learned in my life is a lot of the time the culture comes downhill, and culture comes from that top of the organization. What advice do you have to hoteliers and leaders specifically of groups to help create a great culture? And, like you said, really lead with empathy and love and passion.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's those things that are most important, Steve. And it's easier said than done, of course. I think that for me, the element is about constant communication. It's of your values. What are your values? What are your core principles? And how are those communicated? And once you've done that, you've got to walk the talk. So I think in every effective organization that I've been involved in or seen from the outside, they have a set of core values that really honor the people that work there and give them the sense that what they're doing is meaningful and that they're respected and honored for that undertaking.
So wellness has been a big trend in hospitality. What are your thoughts on it? And do you think we're going to continue to see that trend even more?
Oh gosh, David, I think we're just at the beginning of that. I think the hospitality world started out in the United States, because Europe, another story.
Right.
In the United States, we said, okay, we're going to have gyms, and then we're going to have spas, and okay, we've got wellness. But I think that the holistic approach to wellness is really here at the very early stage and has such tremendous promise. And there are so many things that are possible now. Just think, for example, what you can get from an Oura Ring or an Apple Watch.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many metrics around your heartbeat, your health, your, all of these elements that we're reading and understanding what the impact of eating this thing or changing your diet, doing vitamin drops and so on and so forth. So how do we integrate more of those into the hospitality experience? I think it's going to take some learning for sure, but people are, I think, after the element of well-being and in a much broader sense than going to the spa and getting relaxed. It's how do I make my life better? I'm one of the things I'll mention is that it's interesting how much focus there is on longevity, which is interesting. I mean, there are people trying all sorts of things. If I don't eat but once a day, will I live longer? I'd kind of suggest that that it's not about living longer; it's about living well, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, that's great. And I'm curious about your perspective on this as somebody who's been in the luxury space for 40 years. And I feel like of all the people in this industry in the US, you might have some of the best perspective here. What are luxury hotels in the United States specifically? What are they doing right and a lot of them doing well? And where's an area that they're getting wrong where there could be some improvement there?
Yeah, I think, let's take just one thing, for example, which is food and beverage, which I think for many years, hotels really looked at that as a necessary evil. They weren't making much money off of it. Well, we got to serve the stuff. And, we've seen some of the large brands, and Hilton has been fascinating in this regard, go out to independent restaurateurs and experts and bring them in-house and say, look, we really don't want to be the Hilton brand of hospitality. We want to deliver something that's really special and unique, which goes against the book of trying to create uniformity and consistency and systems that are always measurable. So I really appreciated that they're taking a risk on that and understanding that unless they do, they're probably not going to capture all of the luxury market that they'd like to get. So I think that's one example where, there's been improvement and there's more room for improvement there in food and beverage. And I'd call that the culinary experience.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anything that they're doing right? Anything that you go to that you've seen more of that you really like?
Oh boy. Their systems and their ability to pull apart metrics is super impressive, right? They've got the resources to be able to understand that. Now, that being said, you got to understand how to use those. And I think that you can get overly reliant on metrics and not apply enough of the feel that you have from experience. So, I think I'm very impressed with the number of programs and the metrics that the bigger brands have developed and are putting to use.
So, for those who are listening who maybe are just starting out in hospitality or looking to get into hospitality, what advice would you give to the younger generation that is looking to start a career in hospitality?
Well, great question. And actually, my kids have asked me that question as well. First of all, be very curious. I think that that's maybe some of the best advice that I've received, which is to continually ask questions. Not take the path well trodden, but ask the question: is that the right path for me?
Right.
And really explore that. And in the process of doing that, I think you'll find the people and the companies that live the values that you have. And that's so important in getting going in any kind of business, is to align yourself with the people that have your values and you feel confident are going to be consistent and aligned with your approach and where you want to be in life. So, that and take some risk. I think another aspect of starting a career, to David's question in hospitality, would be to take a look at things and say, well, this is the way things have always been done. What's a way we can do things differently? And would that make a difference, right? Would that be meaningful? I always thought I had a strong advantage coming in from outside the hospitality industry. As a lawyer, as a real estate developer, I had a different point of view, and there were no sacred cows or nothing that I thought, well, got to do it that way because that's the way it's always been done. In fact, quite the contrary. That, well, why are they doing it that way? And just asking those questions and understanding, because that leads to innovation, that leads to creative thinking, and I think in today's world, those are going to be the aspects of your career that are going to make a difference. There's so many things are getting picked up by AI. That's a topic everybody's on these days, but
Yeah.
it's fairly straightforward to be a lawyer. Maybe that's really unless you're in the creative side of that or accounting and that sort of thing. So, but you can really add value by thinking differently than how things have been done. So, ask questions, think differently.
That's great. That's great. Great advice. So this whole time we've been asking you questions, Mark. This is where we turn the tables and let you ask David and I a question.
Okay. I'll ask this question. What's the most exciting thing you've heard about technology and changes in the hospitality industry in recent podcasts?
Oh man, I one thing that I love hearing more about is how there are more hyper local partnerships, and I don't know if this specifically is technology per se, but more how we are focused on incorporating these experiences, whether it is if you're in Napa, doing wine tasting, exploring the area. It's beautiful. So more of the partnerships that I don't know, maybe we're able to communicate more clearly via technology.
Yes.
But really how hotels are really focusing on the experience side of things and, really exploring the area outside of the hotel and also all the areas around the hotel aside from just the location that they're going to.
Great. Well, thanks. That's very interesting. And then a follow-up question is, what are you guys seeing and hearing in the wellness industry or hospitality wellness that gets you excited or that's been kind of interesting?
Yeah, and I'll take this one too. I think the wellness space is super interesting. I love all the plant-based things. Me personally, I'm just not a fan of if I can do something natural over like a prescription or something like that, I'll take the natural one at 10 out of 10 times. But also I've heard about these almost resorts that you talked about. It's not about how long you're living, but having that quality of life along with that. So there's
Yeah.
these almost resorts you can go into where they test everything in your body and get a
Yeah.
whole almost report card of this is how you're doing as a human being. So I think we're going to see more of those. I know there's some in Europe that are being out, and I think there's one opening in the United States. But I think we're going to just see a lot more of these trends that focus on wellness, whether it is those natural drugs, exercise, but really focusing on just living a healthier lifestyle. So I think, like you said, we're in the beginning of it.
We are, and Steve, they're also quite innovative companies that are doing this in Asia, and they're combining centuries old traditions and techniques, whether it's acupuncture or herbal medicine and that sort of thing, along with the diagnostic tools that you have in modern medicine.
Sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Well,
yeah.
David's having some technical difficulties, but what we're going to do, why don't we just hand it over to John, our producer? He's been listening the whole time, so we're going to have him ask you one more question before we get you out of here.
Great, thank you.
You mentioned at the beginning one of your favorite parts about being in the hotel space and developing hotels is developing a great place to work and for your staff and employees. I'm curious, you keep hearing about labor shortages and rising labor costs. So I'm curious, how are you guys dealing with that? What have you been doing to combat that and deal with those issues?
Boy, there's no easy answer there. I think, and you look at resort hotels, the critical issue is that these places where you want to go are just way too expensive for staff to be able to live there. So the affordability crisis, as you can imagine, in these resort destinations, really just puts a terrific hurt on your ability to attract and retain key employees. So, one aspect of this is certainly getting these programs off the ground to provide meaningful workforce housing in those communities. And, sadly, a lot of these communities want to just kind of be contained and want to kind of deal with that, but people are driving several hours to get there to work. There's got to be some solutions there. And, some places have addressed that. When we built a property in the Napa Valley up in Calistoga, we partnered with Calistoga Affordable Housing and donated a part of the land with all the infrastructure there. And they built a wonderful community for about 30 families. And they didn't have to work at our property at Solage, but we were adding to the workforce with affordable housing.
Is your employment pool or your labor force, is it a lot of seasonal stuff, or do you have people that are mostly full-time? And how long do people normally stay with you guys?
We try to keep them for as long as we can. And a fair percentage, 10 to 15% are seasonal. There's also another element, which is the visa holders. And they have been a terrific source of really experienced labor, taking opportunities that wouldn't be filled otherwise. The Trump administration would like you to believe that they're taking Americans' jobs, but really they aren't. They're filling, for example, in Aspen, or probably have 20 of the J1 students that are there that are trained in hospitality. They want to be in the hospitality business. They're dorming up with others. There might be 5 or 6 people in a room, but they love this experience. And, they've been a terrific addition. I think, sadly, that those J1 visa holders are being restricted by this administration, and we're losing a lot of valuable talent.
Well, Mark, this has been great. I appreciate the time. This is where you get to tell us more about how people can get in touch with you or learn more about Auberge Partners.
Sure. Well, thank you. Best way to get in touch with me is email mharmon@aubergepartners.com. And, we have a property in Texas. If anybody's interested in that, it's going to be a wonderful property. We just started construction. I'm open to questions that come through that email or on LinkedIn or occasionally on Instagram, although I've sworn it off for the time being.
Well, that's great, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been another episode of The Modern Hotelier. Whether you're watching or listening, we appreciate you tuning in. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We look forward to seeing you and hearing you on the next episode. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
You made it to the end of The Modern Hotelier. Thanks for watching or listening. The Modern Hotelier is produced by Modern Hotelier Media. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're listening on YouTube, or subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you know a good guest, sponsor, or have media needs, feel free to reach out to us at hello@themodernhotelier.com. Thanks and have a great day.